Some victories are forgotten within days. Others become legendary whispers that travel through dojos for decades. But what happened on that summer afternoon in 1967 wasn't just a victory. It was an earthquake that cracked the foundation of everything martial artists thought they knew. When a fourth-degree black belt from Okinawa stepped forward to challenge a young Chinese instructor, he expected to teach a lesson about respect, about hierarchy, about the supremacy of ancient traditions. Instead, he received an education so brutal, so complete, so philosophically devastating that it would haunt him for the rest of his life. Not because his body was broken, but because his entire worldview shattered in less time than it takes to boil an egg. August 1967, Long Beach, California. The air inside the gymnasium crackled with tension and testosterone as the International Karate Tournament brought together warriors from every corner of the martial arts world. Japanese senseis with decades of training, Korean masters whose kicks could split the heavens, Chinese kung fu practitioners moving like silk hiding steel, Filipino fighters with hands faster than thought. They came from Okinawa, from Tokyo, from Seoul, from Manila, from Hong Kong, each one representing not just themselves, but their entire nation's martial heritage. This wasn't some friendly exhibition where everyone shakes hands and goes home. This was cultural warfare disguised as sport. National honor hung in the balance with every strike, every throw, every submission. The Japanese contingent carried themselves with particular swagger, and they had earned it. For years, their karateka had swept through American tournaments like a typhoon through fishing villages. Their discipline was legendary. Their technique was flawless. Their spirit was unbreakable. Karate wasn't just what they did. It was who they were, passed down through bloodlines and brutal training that would make grown men weep. They came to Long Beach not hoping to win, but expecting to conquer. In their minds, the outcome was predetermined. Japanese martial arts reigned supreme, and everyone else was merely pretending. Then this outsider arrived. Bruce Lee, barely 26, carrying himself with the casual confidence of someone who knew secrets others hadn't discovered yet. He wasn't there to compete in the traditional sense. No, he was demonstrating something he called Jeet Kune Do, a name most people couldn't pronounce and fewer understood. To the casual observer, it looked like just another variation of Chinese theatrical fighting. Pretty to watch, maybe impressive in movies, but utterly worthless when fists started flying for real. Bruce performed demonstrations that seemed impossible, punching from 1 inch away and sending fully grown men stumbling backward, executing push-ups on just 2 fingers, moving with speed that made cameras struggle to capture him. And between these physical marvels, he spoke philosophy, about being formless, about adapting like water, about abandoning rigid tradition in favor of practical truth. The Japanese delegation watched with barely concealed contempt. Every word Bruce spoke was an insult to everything they held sacred, suggesting that kata, those ancient forms practiced for centuries, were too inflexible, heresy, claiming that preset techniques failed in real combat, blasphemy, arguing that martial arts needed to evolve beyond tradition. This Chinese upstart was practically begging to be humbled, and one man in particular felt the insult more deeply than others. Yuichi Nakachi wasn't some weekend warrior who earned his black belt at a strip mall dojo. This was a fourth-degree master forged in the brutal crucible of Okinawan karate, where training meant bleeding, sweating, and occasionally breaking bones in the pursuit of perfection. He had studied under teachers whose lineage stretched back through generations of warriors. He had competed in Japan against the best fighters his nation could produce and emerged victorious. He came to America with a sacred mission: to spread authentic karate, to show these Westerners what real martial arts looked like. Nakachi didn't fight for sport or trophies. He practiced full-contact knockdown karate, the kind that sent opponents to hospitals and ended careers. His record spoke for itself: hundreds of matches, 0 defeats, and a reputation for absolute mercilessness. Now here stood Bruce Lee, casually dismantling everything Nakachi had dedicated his entire existence to perfecting, saying that traditional methods were obsolete, that fighting wasn't about following choreographed forms, but about honest self-expression. To Nakachi, These weren't just words, they were a declaration of war. After Bruce finished his demonstration, Nakachi approached through an interpreter, requesting a private word. The conversation started with false politeness, the kind that precedes violence. Nakachi acknowledged that Bruce's demonstrations were impressive, entertaining even. But demonstrations weren't combat. Performing techniques on cooperative partners proved nothing. He wanted to test whether Bruce's philosophy could survive contact with a real opponent who wouldn't politely fall down. Someone who represented genuine karate. Someone who wouldn't cooperate. The challenge hung in the air like smoke. Everyone nearby stopped breathing. This wasn't just two men disagreeing about fighting styles. This was East confronting East. Ancient traditions squaring off against revolutionary innovation. The old guard defending its territory against an upstart claiming to see further. Japanese honor versus Chinese pride played out in front of witnesses who understood exactly what was at stake. Bruce listened without flinching, smiled gently, and agreed immediately. Yes, demonstrations weren't the same as real fighting. He'd be happy to test his methods under live conditions with genuine resistance. When would Nakachi prefer to do this? The Japanese master, not expecting such ready acceptance, paused before answering. Now, here, in front of everyone. So there could be no confusion, no excuses, no revisionist history later. Bruce's smile never wavered. Of course, let's find space. Word spread like wildfire through the tournament. Bruce Lee versus a Japanese karate master. Real fighting. No demonstrations. Within minutes, 200 people had gathered in a gymnasium outside the main arena. Mats were laid down, not for safety, but to mark boundaries. The terms were negotiated quickly. Nakachi wanted full contact. No protective gear, no stopping until someone submitted or couldn't continue. Bruce agreed to everything. No rules. No restrictions. Real fighting exactly as it should be. But Bruce added one condition, a 2-minute time limit. If neither fighter finished the other within that window, they'd call it a draw. Nakachi laughed. 2 minutes was generous, more than he'd need. Bruce simply nodded. Yes, it was. They took their positions. Nakachi settled into perfect Zenkutsu Dachi, the front stance that had been refined over centuries. Left leg forward, right leg anchored, back straight as bamboo. His hands formed a guard that looked carved from stone. Every angle was precise. Every muscle engaged correctly. This was Okinawan karate distilled to its purest essence, the culmination of generations of masters refining the art of human combat. Bruce stood differently, relaxed, loose, weight shifted onto his back leg while his front foot barely kissed the ground. His hands were raised but flowing, never locked in any recognizable position. No traditional stance, no rigid structure. This was Jeet Kune Do, formless, adaptive, impossible to predict because there was nothing fixed to predict. The makeshift referee asked if both fighters were ready. Both nodded. 200 people held their breaths simultaneously. The referee's hand rose, then dropped. Begin. Nakachi exploded forward. Japanese karate's philosophy in action. Aggressive, direct, overwhelming. He launched a Gyaku-Zuki reverse punch with full hip rotation, the technique that had demolished dozens of opponents, the strike that represented everything karate embodied. Perfect form, maximum power, absolute commitment.